Right, let's go over mixing and all of the tricks that I use when getting beats ready for an artist. Mixing and mastering engineers are often the last people to touch a track before it gets released, and one way to annoy them is to send a mastered track that has little to no headroom. I'll put the word mastered in parenthesis because we as producers and beat makers generally have little knowledge on mastering. A lot of the harsh effects that we use, like clippers and limiters, mean that the engineer is going to have no headroom to correctly mix and master the track for an artist. Of course, you are going to want to allow the mastered version for things like YouTube and your beat store, but you'll want to make sure that the version that you give to an artist to take to the studio has enough headroom for an engineer to work with. This amount's going to vary from producer to producer, but the magic number that I aim for is around -6 dB. This means you want your master track to be peaking at around -6, and from my experience of working with artists, this is enough headroom for an engineer to then work their magic. So here I've got a track pulled up from one of my previous videos. I've just gone to the mixer and set all of the sliders and panning back to their default values so I can go through and remix it. The only thing that's been left on these sounds is the creative effects. Creative effects are things like RC20 and Shaperbox that aren't necessarily used for mixing, but more for adding colour and shape to your sounds. If you'd like to see a breakdown of these effects and how I use them, then I'll leave a link to the first video in the description. So my first step when mixing is to take all of my sliders and bring them all the way down, and I'll then level these instruments in order of importance. In most subgenres of hip hop, this will mean that we'll be starting with the kick and 808. In my beats, the kick is usually the loudest instrument, so I'm going to be leveling that first. Now, I don't really like using numbers when mixing, but I usually like to set my kick at around -9, as this is a nice point to then level all of my instruments against it. So I'm just going to bring the slider up for my kick until it's hitting around -9, and from this point onwards, I'll be using my ear to level everything else. Next, I want to level my 808 so it's working well with my kick but not overpowering it. I want most of the low end punch to come from my kick, so I'll also be using Shaperbox to sidechain my 808. If you don't have Shaperbox, you can use other sidechaining plugins like Kickstart 2 or Sidechainer if you want a free alternative. You can also use FL Studio's limiter in compression mode, and the setup for all of these plugins is going to remain the same. To set up your sidechain, you first want to make sure that you've got your kick selected in the mixer. From here, you can then right click this arrow below your 808 or bass track and select sidechain to this track. Next, you want to apply your sidechaining plugin to your bass or 808, and inside the plugin, you next need to come to the wrapper settings. Once you go into the processing tab, you'll then see that you can right click on this sidechain option and select your kick. You then just want to make sure that this checkbox next to it is selected. Now that I've got all that routed, I can just come back into Shaperbox, make sure that I've got the trigger set to audio and I've got external sidechain selected. The reason I like to use Shaperbox is because it gives you a visual indication of the waveform for the kick, making it super easy to draw your sidechain curve. So now that I have my sidechain set up, I just need to level this 808 against my kick. So now that my low end instruments are set and leveled correctly, I'll next be leveling all of my drum elements. The snare or clap is usually the next loudest instrument, so that's what I'll be leveling next. Depending on the type of snare you've used, you might want to use an EQ to cut out any unwanted frequencies. All of the drums in this track are from the 404 drum kit, which is going to be on sale very soon, and all of the sounds in the kit have been processed, so you won't need to worry about any of that. So I'm just going to bring the level of my clap up until it's sitting nicely with my low end instruments. Right, next up I'm going to be leveling my hi-hat. Most of the time your hi-hats are only going to contain high frequencies, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about EQing them. One plugin I do like to add is Fresh Air, and this is just going to emphasize some of those higher mid and high frequencies. I also like to add chorus to my hi-hats, and this is going to give them some extra colour. Now I can bring the level up of my hi-hat until it's sitting nicely with my other instruments. The only other drum elements left to level now are my perks, and I like to level these all in one go. I basically want my perks to serve as filler instruments that are going to add some extra bounce to my drum loop. I'll also pan my perks left and right a little too, and this is going to help add that bounce that I'm looking for. To give my percussion a bit more of a spacey feel, I also have them routed to my percussion bus, which has a very subtle instance of Valhalla vintage verb. So I'm just going to hit play now and start bringing my perks up until they sit nicely in the mix. Now the last part of this beat we're going to level is of course the melody. I'm going to take the same approach here as I did with my drums and level these instruments in order of importance. I already have these sounds ordered from left to right, so all I need to do now is level them against my drums. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed the video or if you found it useful, then make sure to hit the thumbs up button before you leave. And if you're new to the channel, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're slowly creeping towards 3K, and as soon as I get there, I'm going to be dropping a free loop kit for all of my subscribers. As always, if you'd like to gain access to this FLP as well as all of the other projects from my videos, then you'll need to be subscribed to my Patreon. I'll leave some links to that in the description, as well as the step-by-step video on how I made this beat. If you'd like to know how I make dark guitar melodies, then I'll leave a link to that video up here. Then I'll just leave a random video from the channel down here. Big shout out to anybody that's still here at the end of the video. I've been Era, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you all in the next one.